zoning map, to hear and decide appeals made by administrative officials or bodies charged with enforcing the ordinance, and to analyze variance requests as permitted under the ordinance. The BZA does not have the power or the authority to amend the zoning ordinance or to disregard its provisions or to rezone parcels of land. Changes in the ordinance must originate with City Council, not with the BZA. We have a couple of absent board members. Let's do a roll call quickly, and then we'll identify who they are, and then I'll entertain motions to excuse their absences if people are inclined to make them.
Board Member Blazinski. Thanks. Member Leaks May.
Here.
Member Colson is absent. Member Monk.
Here.
Member Palmer.
Here.
Member Steidemann.
Here and late. Apologies to the board
And Chair Williamson.
Here.
You have a quorum. You have 6 members present and 1 member absent.
Right. I will entertain a motion to excuse Board Member Colson's absence, if anyone is inclined to make one.
I move that we excuse Board Member Colson's absence.
Seconded.
Right. Motion by Board Member Leaks May, supported by Stedman. Let's say all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes. And that takes us to approval of the agenda. Everyone has an agenda in front of you, so if you haven't done it already, take a look at the agenda and consider whether you have any proposed additions, subtractions, issues with anything on the agenda for tonight. If you have none, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda for tonight.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda for tonight.
Support.
Right, motion by...
Excuse me, through the chair.
Yeah.
Just one quick reminder, if everyone can please just make an extra effort to speak into the microphone and maybe project a little bit. We do have, which is kind of awesome, we do have some closed captioning that's being done that helps, and also just help with us if we have to go back to the record and listen to the meeting again, but appreciate that. Thank you. I should have said that earlier.
All right, thank you, Justin. Motion to approve the agenda made by Vice Chair Palmer, support by Board Member Leaks May. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes. And following along with the agenda, that next takes us to approval of the minutes. We all would have received, with our agenda packet tonight, a copy of the minutes from the BZA meeting held on July 20th, 2021. I'll remind all members that you can vote to approve the minutes even if you were not present at the meeting, so long as you have reviewed the minutes.
Through the chair, I see that you stated that you're voting no, but I think you meant yes.
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out, Vice Chair Palmer. I did actually vote yes on that motion. It was no to the proposal. So that should be corrected in the minutes on the first vote that we had on the first variance request. Any other comments, proposed corrections, proposed changes to the minutes? In that case, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes with the adjustment of properly recording my vote on that first variance request as pointed out by Vice Chair Palmer.
I'll make a motion to accept the change and the minutes.
Second.
Right, motion by Vice Chair Palmer, support by Board Member Stedman. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes. And that takes us to our call to audience. If there is anyone in the audience tonight that would like to make a statement or raise an issue with the BZA that is not an issue that is related to anything on our agenda for tonight, feel free to come forward and do so. Seeing none, we will close the call to audience and we will move on to our regular agenda items. First regular agenda item that we have tonight is a wall sign variance request for 928 East 10 Mile Road. The standards for sign appeals under our ordinance are as follows. Under section 6-268, the BZA also adjudicates sign appeals. We may modify or reverse decisions of building inspectors with 4 concurring votes. A wall sign variance requires fewer votes than a dimensional variance. When acting as a sign board of appeals, the BZA can either approve the application as presented, approve a modified version of the application, or reject the application. If the BZA approves the application as presented, the board must find that all criteria for the variance are met. If the BZA rejects the application, the applicant must be provided with a written explanation of the reasons for the rejection. So if any board members vote in favor of rejecting the sign variance up for tonight, please state your reasons along with your vote. The standard for granting a variance from sign regulations under our ordinance is that a practical difficulty must exist on the site that limits visibility of the sign, or a variance is warranted due to the relatively large size of the site, frontage, or building, or that a variance would significantly improve conformity of an existing sign. In order to grant a variance, the BZA must find that the inability to conform with regulations presents more than a mere inconvenience or inability to attain a supposed higher financial return, that the practical difficulty or unique condition is exceptional and peculiar to the property and results from conditions that do not exist generally throughout the city. Allowing the variance will result in substantial justice being done and will not be contrary to the public purpose and general intent of the regulations. A lesser variance would not allow the applicant to have a reasonable outlet for free speech, and the variance will not adversely affect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. We have an applicant tonight who is requesting a sign variance from the standard 40 square foot limit to a 120 square foot sign. The reasons are set forth in the agenda packet. In short, the reasons are that this building is in an unusual location on the I-696 service drive, which has an extremely wide area over which westbound traffic must try to see a sign, and that it's not easy for drivers to turn around if they miss the turn at Bermuda because of the specific characteristics of this road. The applicant has provided responses to the city's inquiries as to how the proposed variances meet the criteria under the zoning ordinance. But if the applicant would like to make a couple of comments on it, the applicant is welcome to do so, and then we will also hear from city staff. Good evening. If you want to come forward, just state your name, please, and...
Hello, I'm Terrence Salch with Aver Sign Company. I'm representing Dr. Hill. He's out of town with an engagement tonight. The only 2 other comments that I wanted to make to what was presented in the application was that if you were to take the sizing of each of the line items, I guess you'd call them, of each individual sign, and square them in, they would add up to 40 total square feet. But the way that the sign ordinance is calculated, the sign size is calculated by the ordinance, it boxes the whole area in, and therefore we're at 120.
Okay, thank you. If you want to just stay close to the microphone as we go through the application, I'm sure we'll have additional questions for you. And Justin, did you want to provide any staff comments on this one?
I think Chair Williamson covered things off pretty well. Again, Justin Lyons, Planning Manager for the city. Just wanted to note that, yes, the application was reviewed by the building department, who reviews signs, and did deny the application based on the requirements that were noted by Chair Williamson. Just wanted to note that this building is on a corner that does face 3 street frontages, so in theory they could have a wall sign on each street frontage the way that the ordinance is written. And the applicant, or representation for the applicant, is correct that the measurement essentially is making a rectangle around the sign. So, there's other creative signs that are around town that have different text everywhere, but basically the measurement is a rectangle around the sign. So that's really all I have to add, but thank you.
Thank you, Justin. A couple of quick questions before you sit down. Under the language of the existing ordinance, because of the fact that they have frontages on 3 different streets, would that permit them, in theory, to have a sign on each of those 3 frontages that was a 40 square foot sign?
Correct, 40 square feet, or think the exact language says, shall not exceed 10% of the wall surface, excluding the calculated area of windows and doorways, or 40 square feet, whichever is smaller. So the facade is measured on each side of the street, and so whatever that calculation comes up as, it's either that calculation or 40 square feet is the max.
And with the size of this building, it's fair to say it's unlikely that the calculated number would be less than 40 square feet for this building?
Correct. I can take a look and see if that was in the sign application, but it is a larger building as a former church that's now a doctor's office.
Yeah, that was my recollection as
Yeah.
well. All right, thank you, Justin. At this point, we will open public hearing on this issue at 7:23, it looks like, or 7:28.
I have 7:26.
7:26. Seeing no one from the public, we'll also close the public hearing at 7:26. And with that, I will open this up to any questions from board members, either for the applicant or for staff.
Through the chair, is there a plan for a larger sign to be placed like directly in front of the building, like on the grassy area or the snowy area at all?
We do have a monument sign that meets the ordinance that has been approved and in production for the front of the building. It goes a little bit to the west. It's rather small, actually. It's 3.5 foot tall by 10 foot wide, and it meets the ordinance requirements.
I guess I'm trying to understand based on this picture, so regarding the variance, so you have the front portion of the wall, are you saying there are going to be additional signs around the building? I'm trying to understand, because I don't see it.
If you look at the overhead view, I think that was part of your packet.
Okay,
This was it looks like an old, satellite view. So there is a driveway that would be to the east of the building. The monument sign will be within the property line and east of that driveway.
I see.
It's a multi-tenant sign, and the fonts are extremely small and literally impossible to read. It's more like a wayfinding sign, and the only person that would really be able to read that sign would be somebody in a car turning into that driveway. So it will be helpful for that, no doubt. The wall signs that we're proposing are absolutely for identifying the building if you've been referred to the practice or any of the 4 practices that are being advertised, you can find the building. It's one-way road, or it's a one-way service drive. If you're on the other side of the service drive trying to navigate which turnaround to hit, you can read it with what we're proposing. If we went with the permissible size, which we did show a rendering of what that would look like, you literally can't read it.
Through the chair, is this, are these 4 businesses in there, and just as an example, are they all under the same clinic name?
No, they're actually tenants.
Okay,
So the
Separate
main
tenants.
tenant is the owner of the building, and the other tenants are actually tenants. So
I just didn't know, and I'm gonna make up a name, that it was Partridge Clinic, and all those places were affiliated with Partridge Clinic, is what I'm saying.
no, they're separate businesses and separate
Okay.
practices.
I know it was a strange question, but it would be
Relevant.
just that easy to do the clinic name, so to speak,
Understood.
and tell people to come to that clinic, is what I was thinking. Larger and bolder, but,
So Hill Orthopedics is not the owner?
Actually, yes, they are. Dr. Hill is the owner.
Okay.
And he's obviously the anchor, one of the anchor tenants.
I guess when I'm looking at this, I thought you said the line listed at the top was the owner.
yes.
Is that what so this is the owner, but this is,
The owner of the building, but they each own their own practice.
I
'cause
understand,
they're-
okay.
Yeah, they're all
Okay.
doctors just working for themselves.
okay. Okay,
Board Member Monk, any questions from your end?
I have no questions. No, I'm pretty good opinion on this one.
Okay.
May I ask, what will be the hours of your practice?
I honestly can't answer that. I don't know.
Okay, I was just,
I'm assuming, I know obviously business hours, and
Right.
since there is potentially the urgent care,
Right.
I'm sure they'll have a little bit of an extended hours.
okay,
But typically an urgent care is around 9 or 10,
right,
but I
right.
can't definitively answer your question of exactly what time.
I was just taking that into consideration regarding viewing too, if it's going to be later hours and for the businesses. I was just curious about that. In the winter, it gets a little darker and earlier, and I was just wondering.
Through the chair, it's my understanding, though, that the larger sign that you're proposing are the larger letters in the first photo. The second one is what is allowed. Is
Yes,
that correct?
correct, yes.
So, and you're also stating that the square itself has to be that 40 square feet, correct?
Correct. The square foot is calculated by putting a rectangle around the area of the signage, the entire area of the signage. So if the gaps in between that are brick are also calculated as signage. And our proposal has each individual sign line squared only around the sign, and that is actually 40 square foot of signage.
Yeah, so if it was all one sign, it'd be looked at differently, is that what you're stating to me? Because they're individual slats, is what I want to call them?
I think we were trying to illustrate that 40 square foot of actual signage is individual. Each individual pan is roughly 10 square feet, right? And there's 4 separate pans. But since we space them out so that they're not right on top of each other, and that they're it looks appropriate for the building and it's readable, because if you squish them together, you won't be able to read it. The bricks are also calculated. That airspace that is not a sign is also calculated in that square footage of the sign.
Okay.
So basically, the font is in a sense floating across the brick. And it's just if you looked at just the tight rectangle around fonts for each one of the individual entries, those added together would be 40 square feet.
Right.
But because of the way the ordinance is drafted, you are also including by necessity all of the brick space that is inside of that.
That's what we were trying to illustrate, exactly.
Right.
In the ordinance, through the chair, the ordinance reads you can only have one sign, correct? You can't have 4 signs to count it as 4 separate signs to get to the square footage?
Right. It's got to be counted as one. That's why it's
Okay.
got they've got to calculate it with the rectangle on the whole thing.
Through the chair, were you planning to do the other sides of the building since it's allowed?
Not at this time, no. If there was ever a separate entrance that we had to identify, it would be wayfinding minded. Like the urgent care, if it was going to be a door over here, we might
Right.
call that out, but this is for visibility when you're hitting the turnaround on 690, or on 696 to identify the building and the practice.
So your main sign on the building will be to the west.
It is,
And-
it faces north and it's west justified, yes.
And then the monument signs to the east, on the same side of the building, is that correct?
It's on the ground.
No, I understand, but I'm saying that both signs would be on the same side of the building.
They're on the north
facing-
side of the
on north
property,
side,
yeah.
Right, yeah, okay. Are they allowed to have, Justin, are they allowed to have 2 signs on the same side of the street?
You can only have one sign, wall sign per street frontage. There's definitely other people around town that have combined tenants into one sign like that. Yeah, so we would
No,
count
but I
that as
mean,
one.
being that he's having the monument sign on the same side of this building,
Oh,
and also the wall sign, is that allowed to have those 2 signs?
that's permitted.
I just didn't know if it was too much
So you can
signage.
have one wall sign, one monument sign.
Correct. And I think there's a limit on one ground sign per site, I think.
So some board members may recall, we have had somewhat similar sign variance requests in the past. Board members Blazinski and Stedman probably remember this, but we've had
Motor City Pond.
Motor City Pond was a thing that came to mind for me as well when I looked at this.
just an unusual site to work with.
Yeah, they had the train overpass. May I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Through the chair, in your application, you only talk about westbound traffic. How come you don't bring up eastbound traffic?
I will say that Dr. Hill filled the application out, and I'm here representing him tonight, but I can tell you that westbound traffic and westbound traffic has, on the service drive, would never be able to see the monument sign that's on the service drive. So that's, I think what his intent was to say that westbound that's the only chance to read and see where that building is. Eastbound, it honestly will be a little hard to read it until you have the right angle, but you'll see the monument sign at least.
Okay. And so you're making the argument that if you miss it, then you'll go past Bermuda and have to turn around basically at Main Street. Is that
Yes,
my
you'll
understanding?
have to turn around and go completely back around to the north side of the service drive, all the way back to Woodward, and turn around and go back to the,
Can we put the map up, Justin?
Thinking about that.
Yeah.
Having to do that.
Yeah, I think, I didn't quite understand that, so I think that was backwards. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding correctly. Or can you just maybe just go to Google Maps?
Yeah, I was gonna
And
say.
just type in 928 East 10 Mile. Okay, so when you come off the highway here, you're saying, come off the highway here, you're saying people need to look left, see it, hit Bermuda, and turn around and come back to it, correct?
if I could I go to the street view? Could we get the street view and I can show you? If you could drop me on the service drive and turn and look at the building, you can actually see, right on the service drive where he's talking where you would get off and see.
On the north side
On
or
the
south
north
side?
side service drive. And a little bit east, right around there. Yep, that'd be good. Turn. Have a little bit to the buildings.
Oh, I see.
This is what we're trying to capture, that traffic that you can look and see the building. Now, off the freeway, and you're driving, you have to turn around and see it, now you know where it's at. And that's where the old church sign was. And it's readable from that side at our size.
At the 120 or at the 40?
At the 120 total, but 40 individual.
And keep in mind that those drivers are going a certain speed and you'll,
True.
yeah.
It is readable. I mean,
Right.
it is readable at what we did a test, and you can read it.
Do you happen to know what square footage the church sign was before it got taken down? It
It's
looks
similar.
really similar.
It is similar, yeah.
Okay.
So, through the chair, mostly to the rest of the board actually, is, in all honesty, I feel like this is unnecessary, because if you miss it, you're just going to go one more exit, which I mapped. It was 0.5 miles to the next turnaround, and then you come back. So at worst case scenario, you're going to go a mile of extra driving before you come back. But at the same time, I think, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, I feel like the only other buildings that really would be affected if we passed something that specifically said on 696 would be the Marathon at the corner of Hilton and 696 there, and is it Flatiron District?
Yeah, the
Iron Ridge, which honestly, if they came in and did a fast follow and said, we want the same treatment, probably would need it too, because I remember there was a company there and I could never find it. So can you think of any other buildings besides those three that if we passed an amendment a variance?
I'd like to, if I could make a comment, the
In Woodward
Marathon
and
has
Hilton,
canopy signage, and
there's
it
just
says
that other-
Marathon, and it has a huge pylon sign. You can't miss the Marathon.
Yeah.
This is a new practice in your community that spent a bunch of money on that building, and they need help. They need to be recognized. There's 4 clients in there, or 4 different tenants. They're all in a new building in a new area that you're not going to see. And if you don't give them their exposure, it's hurting them.
Right. So through the chair, I would just go, so adding to your comment, I disagree about your first point about the people missing and turning around and having to find it being of little importance. I think it's actually very large importance to the overall safety of the area would be to have people see and get where they're going and not have to make multiple on and off the freeway. And I mean, it's a pretty unsafe road to begin with. So I just would like people to get safely where they're going. To your second point, I somewhat agree with that. I'd go a slightly different direction and say that if I were to support this variance, it'd mainly be because of the unique nature of the building being located right on the 696 service drive, as well as facing directly into a wall of the service drive. So I'm not sure whether that would still apply to every other building there, but I do think part of the unique character of this property is that that freeway wall goes the entire length of the building and, almost to their parking lot entrance, to where, as the gentleman said, it would be blocking any signage on the ground. And, side comment, I think he's done a beautiful job reusing that building, which is not something to be taken in consideration for this, but it's also a nice, clean sign, a well-done reuse of a building. Yeah, there's just a lot of good things, but mainly what I see about the property is being located on the service drive and right directly facing an exit of the service drive to where it has those walls.
If I may, through the chair, may I just add something else from just a different perspective? Based on the nature of these businesses, the people that will be coming there, I don't think, just by the reason why they'd be even visiting the establishment, the safety is of concern to me for people having to go out of their way to turn here, turn there, not only because of the businesses that are newly starting, but I have just pictured myself going to one of these places and not being able to see the sign, as well as in the condition that I possibly could be in. That would really disturb me and really bother me. So I'm just thinking in terms of that, of the people that will be coming. I mean, chances are, like I think it was mentioned, that these could be seniors. Either way you look at it, it's going to be somebody disabled in some way, whether they have someone driving them or not.
Board Member Leaks May's point, I don't know how many of you have routinely gone past Bermuda and had to stop at that stop sign on the service drive and then cross over the traffic of cars exiting to get onto Main Street there.
Oh, my.
But,
Have fun.
probably something to also consider. Do we have any further questions for staff on this one?
I do, through the chair. Justin, this discussion brought up some things that I think that I hadn't thought of, so thank you. What are your thoughts on that part of it?
I think that the board has brought up some good points, which is why it's good that these decisions are made by the board. Staff is obviously limited to what's in the ordinance, so I think, whether it's a motion to approve or deny, I just always suggest, there is draft motions in here for either, but, this is a motion that should be made by the board, and so I think some of the findings of fact, that align with criteria, I would include those if, either way. So that's about as vague as I can be, but I think
That's okay.
citing the criteria is, what I try and include in those draft motions, so.
That's why this board's kind of cool. I've been on it so long. I think that the input really made a difference. It kind of started me thinking in another direction. Thank you.
Good.
Yeah.
Can I maybe take it one step further? As Ian mentioned, under 6-2-68, we can approve an application, approve a modified application or deny. So I'm trying to figure out how to word this to make it as closed as possible to this specific case. And I'm wondering if it's better to approve a variance of 80 square feet or approve a variance that would allow 4 signs which would be within 40 square feet. Does anyone have any thoughts on which would be the better route to go?
For the slats.
Because he has 4 sets of words. Supposedly they're within 40 square feet if you just take the lines as 4 separate signs. Any thoughts on which of those 2 might be more appropriate?
Well, I'm concerned that.
Go ahead, board member.
Chairperson Williamson is the lawyer on the board, but I'm just concerned that we really can't actually consider that 4-sign thing just because we can't tell the city not to count a box around the signs, which is the way they're counting it. I mean, we can't change that. That's how they do that. So I don't really think we have the latitude for that, but you can say what you think.
Yeah, I mean, board member Blazinski is raising a point that I was also going to address, which is the variance request is for a size variance, not for a number of signs variance, and that would kind of change the nature of the variance to a number of signs. The other potential issue I would see with that, although I like the creative thinking on that, board member Stedeman, is that if there were a variance that allowed 4 signs to be on the facade, and then at some later point, someone decided they wanted to put 4 signs in very different, disparate areas on the facade, then you might end up with a more cluttered looking structure than what the board may be willing to accept in terms of variations in size of one sign.
Yes, and I think that's an excellent point, which is why I want to build in language saying it has to be on 696, and in particular, it has to be across from an opposite side exit ramp, which I think would only apply to, like, again, maybe 2 places in the entire city.
1.
And wall screen, so we could add that as a 3rd requirement.
Yeah, to the extent that any board member is contemplating a motion, I will remind you all that we have language in section 24-427E, which states the BZA may impose such conditions and restrictions upon the premises benefited by a variance as may be necessary to comply with the standards established in this section and the objectives of this chapter. So the BZA does have the ability to place conditions on a variance request if the variance is being granted.
Chair, I like the idea of the condition, board member Stedeman being related to, I don't really know how you would word it, but the actual square footage of the plates being 40 square feet, which
The
is.
combined.
Yeah,
just
the combined.
of the plates.
I do like the idea of the way it was presented to us with the adding up of the actual signage, and that that could be a potential condition that it.
And through the chair, I think though that if there was ever a change of tenant, they would have to stay within that limit also. So if they, and I'm just saying this because we had something with the mobile station, they had certain signs that they were supposed to use and it had a logo. And, we never know what's going to happen when it comes to that situation. So we would have to somehow, we can't tell a landlord what to do, but we have to, put that also as a specific thing in anything that we say, because tenants change. What if Ascension wants their logo on it? And it's not going to be within the limits that we can use.
These are good points that Vice Chair Palmer raises. That said, we historically have not been in the business of acceding to demands or requirements that have been imposed by corporate tenants and/or franchisors. We have had these things come up for us before, and none of those variance requests that I recall has the BZA agreed to that. So in a situation like that, Ascension could come in, take control of the practice, say, we want to have our logo on there. That doesn't mean they get to put their logo on there.
Oh, I'm just saying though, I mean, that's just an example of something that could change the whole look of your sign.
And that would be a risk that if were any variance approved, that's a risk that the
Landlord.
the landlord, the requestor, is going to have to bear.
To your point, I do believe that, Dr. Hill would be 100% comfortable with the restriction of having the 4 equal plates or as we called it plates, but the 4 equal signs that would be limited to 10 square feet each, in the overall envelope being the square footage that was proposed. You could, if they wanted a logo, they'd have to limit it to that area, and they would be a small logo, and you wouldn't read it. So I wouldn't think that'd be a good idea. But if they wanted one, they could put it on there. But that's their limit of where they could put it.
Just reminded me of the mobile station meeting, their standards, and we couldn't let them, just because that's our ordinances. We can't change our ordinances. Yeah.
Didn't we have one with one of the auto rental places too? They wanted to do.
Oh, they wanted to do a big
and it
sign,
said that
yeah.
It was required
Yeah.
by their corporate.
Yeah.
It was enterprise.
Yeah.
Right. Any further questions or comments from board members on this request?
Working on emotion.
Making sure I kind of captured what everyone said. So just confirming it's all words, 100% words, right?
In its current configuration,
Yeah, okay. I didn't know if there was even like a little like leaf or something at the end.
As proposed, that is what they want.
Okay.
No leaves.
What's that wall called? What do you call that?
For the expressway,
The barrier wall on the
barrier
expressway.
wall, 696 barrier wall. Or exit and barrier wall. Both.
Okay. Then I'll motion to approve the wall sign variance application to allow a variance of 80 square feet from the required 40 square feet maximum at 928 East 10 Mile, Sidwall number 24-25-27-204-051. After a public hearing was held, is set forth and published for this date and place, the motion is accompanied by the following findings. More than this will apply, but I'm only going to state number 2, which is the application has demonstrated a variance is needed due to a practical difficulty on the site, such as varied topography, horizontal or vertical road curvature, or presence of structures or desired trees that limit visibility of a sign on the premises. I'm also adding the requirements that this variance allows for all words, no logos. This variance is occurring only on 696, buildings applying to 696. Facing 696, I should say. They're within 100 yards of an exit ramp, and there is a barrier wall in front of the building.
All right, to clarify this motion slightly, Board Member Stedeman, was that a recitation of unique site conditions that you are offering up in the motion as support of the motion? The fact that it is on I-696 Service Drive and facing a barrier wall and entrance ramp onto the freeway.
That is true, and the only requirement I didn't list, because I forgot it, so I don't know if we want to add it last second, is the fact that due to the nature of what the office represents in terms of the clientele driving there and the state of condition they might be in, I didn't add that. I don't think it's necessary, but
I don't think we can.
Through the chair, I think we're better to just keep it.
just keep it to just physical location. Great, okay.
But the motion is to approve, but with specific conditions, which are that the sign must be on the north side of the building facing a barrier wall and exit ramp.
Yes.
Or entrance ramp, that it must be words only and not logos.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, that's a great point. Must be facing 696.
Right, do we have any discussion by board members or any support for the motion on the table?
I'll support that motion.
Right, supported by Board Member Monk. Any further discussion among board members? Hearing none, Jordan will take a roll call vote on this one.
Absolutely. Before I do that, I just want to make sure I have it transcribed as intended by the mover. So through Chair Williamson, or you can answer if you know this. Was this intended to be finding number 2 as was presented in the draft? Was that extended as a longer version of a finding about conditions of the site? Or was that actually intended to add, in addition to findings, a separate list of conditions or requirements?
I think the answer is both, but I'm going to pass
I
this
meant it
one
as specific requirements. I meant it as specific requirements so that it would limit how this would apply in the future to other companies and businesses.
So, and please, I want to make sure I get this exactly as you intended it. Is it accurate to say that that you are reciting finding number 2 as was prepared by staff in the draft approval motion, and that finding number 2 is remaining as drafted, and the extra items that you have proposed are constituting a new list of?
No, I mean, they're related. So I could have read more. There are other things here that, you could have used number 6, for instance, but I chose specifically number 2 because all of the requirements sort of fell into that same zone of, I don't know what you call it, sphere of influence. I'm not sure. They basically all have to deal with the practical difficulty of location.
Understood.
Findings.
That helps.
Findings,
Findings.
yeah.
Through the chair, I think we do want those to be, those unique site characteristics to be added into number 2 as additional findings. And then the only thing that's a true requirement that you want to kind of separately require, wherever that makes sense, is the part specific to the signs being all text and no logo. That's a requirement.
I see what you're
on
saying.
them versus the rest of those are that's kind of how I understand it.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a fair interpretation. You could break it out that way.
Yeah, I mean, you can do it the way, it's your motion, so the way that you're comfortable with.
I mean, I'm not a lawyer, so I just want to close the loop of anyone else coming in and saying they want something because they're on Woodward and it's a similar situation, or they're on 8 Mile, or they're on Hilton for, people will try any route to get what they want. And so I just want to make sure it's very specific to this case. There are very specific criteria for why I'm good with this motion and not having a problem with permitting a variance. So whatever you think the best legal way is.
I think that I think it's fair for you to recite the unique conditions, as Board Member Blazinski has just recommended, that you recite these things as unique conditions, but then also, or as unique issues to the site, but then at the same time also include as a condition that the variance, that the sign, that the variance be applied only to a sign that is facing across 696 and facing the barrier wall, which is how I had understood your motion. was that you were reciting that as a unique condition of the site, but also as a condition for the variance, you were stating that the variance was being granted only for a sign that would be on a wall that was facing across to that barrier wall.
All right, it took me a while to get there, but I'm following now. So I'm going to amend my motion to basically, everything's the same, but in terms of finding number 2, the specific practical difficulties are the building is on 696, the building is within 100 yards of an exit ramp, the building has a large, well, we'll just call it a medium barrier wall in front of it. We'll just call it a barrier wall, don't even put large, medium, right? Just a barrier wall in front of it. Those are the practical difficulties. The additional requirements are that it's all words and no logos as part of this exception, and that it can only be on, even though legally they can have signs on 3 faces based on what Justin said earlier, this particular one can only be on the 696 facing wall. So those are the 2 additional requirements.
And then some of the other conditions in this, like the variance will not adversely affect the health, safety, and welfare of the public and stuff like that. That would be, do we have to add those things in here, or?
I think that, I was taking that for granted, but I think that we should clarify that, that your findings are all of the findings listed in the packet prepared by staff, but that you were making specific focus on
Unique
the
circumstances.
unique circumstances that were more applicable to finding number 2.
So I did not, so we have to basically have all 8 be true then, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that'll also help with your concern regarding anyone wanting to come in and do the same thing. They'll have to meet these specifications.
Okay. So then, I think in my motion I said, you could probably read it back, I said it applies to many in here, but I'm only going to call out 1. Just change it to applies to all 8, but I'm only going to call out 1.
Yeah.
So all the findings as presented in the draft.
The unique conditions, yes.
Okay.
All right, with these clarifications, Board Member Monk, are you still comfortable supporting the motion?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. Jordan, do you have what you need from us?
I do, thank you.
Okay, let's do a roll call vote on this then.
Member Leaks May,
Yes.
Member Monk,
Yes.
Member Palmer,
Yes.
Member Steidemann,
Yep.
Member Blazinski,
Yes.
and Chair Williamson.
Yes, with a requirement only needing 4 approvals, or 4 votes to approve, that motion passes with unanimous approval. And the limited variance that is conditioned as discussed tonight will apply to the building.
Forever and ever. Not just today. All right, some people think it's only for them.
Right, any final comments on that one from
I
staff?
didn't
or-
try.
No, staff will just provide a letter with that motion, so it's clear, and provide it to the applicant, and they can move forward.
All right, great. In that case, we will move on to the second item on our regular agenda for tonight, which is the request for a use variance at 717 East 9 Mile. So we're moving from a sign variance to a use variance. While a sign variance requires a less stringent bar for approval than a dimensional variance, a use variance requires a higher standard to pass than a dimensional variance. In order for a use variance to pass, a use variance must apply to an unnecessary hardship. Under MCL 125.3604 subsection 7, an applicant asking for a use variance in Michigan must demonstrate all of the following. First, that a property cannot reasonably be used for a permitted use under the existing zoning. Second, that circumstances giving rise to the request are unique to the property and not to the surrounding neighborhood. Third, that the proposed use will not alter the essential character of the area. And fourth, that the applicant's problem is not self-created. Under Ferndale's ordinance governing use variances, which is section 24-427, there is an additional requirement that The granting of the variance will be in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the chapter, not injurious to the neighborhood or otherwise detrimental to the general welfare, and that substantial justice will be done. A variance request for a use variance requires at least 2/3 of the board members to approve, which is, with the size of our board, would require at least 6 affirmative votes. The applicant has provided responses to the city's inquiries as to how the proposed variances meet the criteria under the zoning ordinance. But we have the applicant here, and I'm going to welcome the applicant to the podium to give us an explanation of the proposal and an explanation of the variance request. Welcome, gentlemen. Could whichever one of you is going to speak, or both of you, state your full names for us.
All right, well, we have a speech prepared. It's about 7 minutes. I'm just going to go ahead and read that, and then leave it open for you guys to ask us some questions.
Why don't you give us your names first, and then you're welcome to do that.
My name is Steve Kanye. This is Chad Lawson. He's my partner. Together we started C&J Hammerheart Accessories. It's an adult, right now it's an online adult novelty and LGBTQ accessory store. Over the past 5 months, we've had a lot of success with getting things going online. We have over 600 products now, but we have been met with a lot of struggle with trying to find a storefront because we want to be able to interact with our customers on a one-on-one basis. We don't understand why it's so looked like frowned upon to have like an adult novelty store. There are products that people use like every day. What we're selling is not harmful to anyone. It doesn't inconvenience anyone. It doesn't decrease the value of any property. If anything, I think it would bring diversity, value, and income to the area. There's no other stores like that in the state of Michigan right now. We're not selling sex. We feel like that's like the real issue with what's going on with adult novelty. What we're selling is accessories that people use every day, such as like lubricants, dildos, male rings, vibrators. We also are going to sell apparel, such as t-shirts, tank tops, jocks, underwear, jackets, shorts, pants. Most of them are going to have an LGBTQ theme or vibe. We'll also have various leather products, such as harnesses, arm and wristbands, and all of those are also going to be like LGBTQ oriented. People want to go to a store like this rather than like a Cirilla's or a Lover's Lane because they're geared towards straight female clients. They don't want to be judged. They don't want to be embarrassed to purchase things. Zoning, I don't think, should even be an issue. Every mall in America has a Spencer's in it. They sell a lot of the same items, but they allow children in to look at their products. We're not going to be doing that. We came across this location, and we thought that was going to be perfect because it's in almost all industrial area. There's limited residents. There's no churches. There's no schools. The nearest park is over 500 feet away. We thought that we were going to, get a yes for sure from this because we've gotten no's for the last 5 months everywhere around Southeast Michigan. We've looked at like every city. We were told by a lot of people that we shouldn't waste our money by doing this, but we want to stand up for what we believe in, and we're going to continue doing this regardless. Every human being is sexual in nature. We're one of only a few species on this planet that have sex for pleasure. So what is so wrong with these products? I don't think there's anything wrong with them, and I think a lot of people don't think there's anything wrong with them. We'll go through measures to make sure that children and anyone that may get offended cannot see our product from the outside of the building or even the entrance to the building when they come in. We're going to install film on the windows that is like a mirror when you look in, so they're going to look at themselves. When they walk into the building or into the store, there's going to be partitions, and they will need to be 18 and show ID to get in. It's not going to stop any other businesses from opening because there's 3 other vacancies in this strip mall alone. And we drove around Ferndale and noticed about 35 to 40 storefronts in total that are vacant right now. There was another location, it was an adult store called Chosen Books that was like kitty corner from us, where we would like to be, on Hilton. They have since closed down. We couldn't find any information on why they closed, but they're since closed down. There was also a store called Just For Us, which was right downtown Ferndale next to Soho. And we never heard of any kind of problems with that store being open. And they're going to be selling, they were selling like DVDs and magazines and all kinds of adult materials that we're not going to be carrying. We're only going to be carrying the accessories. We're not going to be carrying DVDs. We're not going to be carrying any kind of magazines or anything like that. During the wait for this meeting to come up, we kept looking just to see if we could find anything. We did find a location in Ferndale that was in the zoned area on the western corner of Woodward and 8 Mile. We checked, we called the real estate agent, and he thought we would be a great fit for that, but he needed to contact the landlord, and he would call me back. He called me back and stated that the landlord did not want that type of business there, and I asked the realtor if the landlord was aware that he literally possesses the only property in Ferndale that's available and that's zoned for this kind of business. And he said he doesn't care, he doesn't want it. So even when we find a zoned area, we get a no. So it's like we're stuck with not being able to get a storefront anywhere, and it's kind of frustrating. We just want to sell our products, interact with our customers, and have a legal, undisruptive store that could be a staple in the Ferndale community. And that's where we're at.
Right, gentlemen, thank you for the impassioned speech. We appreciate it. I think that Ferndale in general tends to be a pretty progressive and inclusive space. I think that amongst the residents of the city in general, there is not going to be an overwhelming backlash against the type of business that you're looking at opening. I think that this will probably be a safer space for this type of a business to exist. What your hurdle is going to be, I think, is that one thing we do have in Ferndale is we have a historically rigorous approach to enforcing and preserving our zoning ordinance. As a zoning board, we're a quasi-judicial body. What that means is that any decision that we make here at the level of the Board of Zoning Appeals is a decision that can be cited as precedent by any subsequent applicant who comes in looking for a variance. That means that we have to be extremely careful with any variances that we grant. The variances that we tend to grant are usually variances that are in line with variances that the board has granted in the past, as you have just seen with the sign variance that we just passed. Anytime we allow a variance in the city of Ferndale, we are potentially eroding the zoning ordinance that we have. And as you heard from the preamble of our meeting, we're not actually the body who is empowered to write or rewrite these zoning ordinances. To the extent that we do something that could be construed as doing that, we are impermissibly taking power away from our city council. So we want to hear you out. We're going to give you, gentlemen, certainly a fair chance like we would give anyone else. The nature of your business is not something that is going to negatively impact the way you are perceived here. But we do have some specific requirements in our zoning ordinance and under Michigan law, and those are requirements that we cannot easily set aside. So I want to make sure that you understand that before we start our discussion. So thank you again for the speech. I'm going to have staff take the podium right now, and we'll get comments from staff on the application, and then we'll probably have some questions for you at the board level, and then we'll have some questions for staff as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Again, Justin Lyons, planning manager for the city. I think, again, Chair Williamson kind of outlined all of the considerations and criteria for use variances. I think in conversations with the applicant, staff did try and share, the items of the ordinance regarding hardship that, particularly, were challenging for me to review to say, obviously use variance is what you can propose, but this might be a tough request to review. Obviously, again, this body, the criteria of the adult business ordinance isn't really in question here. I will just note that ordinance is from 2010, so that is quite an old ordinance for future consideration. One other option I did, share with the applicants is, there's a use variance option. You could pursue a rezoning that also has challenges with the rezoning criteria through the Planning Commission as well. And then, one thing we didn't cover, but, obviously is more recent, is, the master plan is being updated. Usually when the city updates the master plan, a lot of zoning ordinance changes go with that. So that could be another avenue to consider, but I just wanted to give the full picture of things that were shared, things that staff were thinking about, but not really much to add on the criteria. A and B of the unnecessary hardship subpart, or I should say, section 24-427D, subpart 3, that was A and B were the portions that, I think that I included in my report for your consideration, but I am here for any other questions you may have.
All right, thank you. Okay, at this point, to the extent there's anyone from the public who wishes to speak, we will open a public hearing on this request at, looks like 8:17 p.m. Seeing no members of the public approaching, we'll also close the public hearing at 8:17 p.m. And I will open questions up to board members. Anyone who has questions you'd like to address either to the applicants or staff.
Through the chair, Justin, what locations in the city, or I'm sorry, what zoning in the city would allow them to open a business like that? And it's not, it just,
Sure.
like he said, I know the minute they told me what they were gonna do, I thought of Just for Us. I mean, we had that for years. So,
Sure, I'm not really familiar. I think that business closed before I started with the city, but the zoning ordinance does allow for adult businesses in the C3 extended business district, which is essentially, the northern portions of Woodward and the southern portions of Woodward near 8 Mile. There are also some additional criteria, like I think adult businesses need to be 1,000 feet from each other, 500 feet from some other uses and parks that the applicants mentioned as well. So you start with the zoning district and then you go into the use regulations to see, how that fits. And so clearly there's already an adult business in the north portion of Woodward with Cirillas, and so automatically that kind of rules out a certain area for this business.
okay. So those areas have not changed over the past, let's say, 5 years or anything like that?
Correct.
Okay.
Just so I'm sure I understand, you're saying Cirillas is within, well, I actually have two questions. Cirillas is within 500 feet of the C3 district on the north side?
I believe the C3 district starts, I think it's just up.
It's at Woodland.
Yes, and so I believe it's just north there, north of Woodland.
And Cirillas, how is Cirillas different than what this location would be, considering Cirillas is in a C2 zone district? Or is, wait.
Well, I think it's C3.
I think they're probably.
It is C3, I believe. So I think similar. I'm not sure how long Cirillas has been there. It may have preceded this ordinance in 2010. I'm not quite sure, but
Yeah, well, yes, it's been there before 2010. It was called Persilla's,
okay.
and now it's called Cirillas, yeah.
So as you can see, this is the city's zoning map, updated last month, but really nothing changed with the C3 district. But north of Woodward here, as board member Steadman mentioned, on Woodland, and then southern end of Woodward here near 8 Mile, and then there was a rezoning 4 or 5 years ago for an individual site for the Motor City Pawnbrokers.
Oh, that's,
Over
okay.
there.
That has to be C3, okay.
It's not considered an adult business, but it's, there's separate use regulations for pawnbrokers.
Yeah, through the chair, it's not your business, it's where you're allowed to put your business because of its nature. There's no way that we can tell a business not, that you're not welcome in our city. So there's always somewhere where it could go. We just have specific areas where it can go.
Yeah, so through the chair, yeah, I don't really know what to say except that it would take a lot of evidence, right, to convince us that nothing else could be opened in that location, which is what I feel like we would have to believe in order to approve this variance. And it still, at that point to me, would feel like it was a rezoning. And so rezonings are not fun. They are scary. I can't say you'll get it, but I don't see how there would be any other real way to go about this other than as a rezoning. If you were to take it that route and just bringing as much specific evidence as possible about where, about the other limitations in the city. But yeah, I don't know. You bring any evidence today of the inability for any other businesses to be operating in that space?
I don't really have anything like that. The landlord is here. I mean, there's four vacancies. There's 4 vacancies in that area.
Is here.
Right here, yep. I mean, other businesses could open there, but there's 3 other spots besides that one. I mean, we want to fill a space to make more businesses for the city instead of just leaving them open and to decay or whatever. I mean, you see that all over the place. And all we want to do is fill its space and generate business and generate other business for all the other people that are in that strip mall, because we'll bring a lot of people there. That's what we're looking to do.
Through the chair, unfortunately, it's not zoned that way.
Right.
And I think that's where we can't change the zoning, and it makes it difficult for us. But there are areas that are zoned for that type of business. I don't know if there's vacancies.
The areas that you're talking about, one has Cirillas in it. We don't want to be by another adult store.
Gotcha.
And the other area was the one that I talked about that we inquired on that was open, on the western side of 8 Mile and Woodward, and the landlord does not want us there.
And there's the
That's the
eastern,
only other area.
there's the eastern side also,
There's nothing there.
or nothing available.
There's nothing available there.
Gotcha, okay. Well, that's all I was thinking is.
The only other place that was
Possibilities.
available was that one that I spoke on that.
So through the chair, I was kind of, what I was trying to say was those specific things that you're saying about Cirillas in the north and the unavailability of the other properties in the only C3 that exists. I think these are things that you could use in an argument for a rezoning to C3, where then you would be able to ask for the special land use. But I was kind of trying to say, like, I get that, and you could use those arguments for rezoning, but we can't use those arguments to say that nothing else could go into this specific, but.
I thought that that's what we were here for, was to try to rezone.
No, variance is different from a rezoning. A rezoning permanently changes the character of that parcel from, for example, from a residential parcel to a commercial parcel.
I guess what I meant was that I thought this was the first step in that process.
A variance is an alternative to rezoning where in some limited circumstances, as permitted under the ordinance, you can use a parcel of property for something that is not ordinarily zoned for. But the requirements for even dimensional variances tend to be fairly strict. A dimensional variance being something like, I want to use a lot that only has 38 feet of frontage when it's supposed to have 40 feet of frontage. A use variance is generally viewed as being substantially more extreme than a dimensional variance. That's why under most communities, municipal codes, and also under Michigan law, the requirements for a use variance are significantly more stringent. A use variance would be something like, it's a residential parcel, but I want to open up a pickle cannery there. Something that maybe could be done in a very unobtrusive fashion, but is still viewed legally as being an extreme change to the character of the parcel. And that's what you're running up against. And your business is not the only business that we've seen with this type of struggle. Of course, as you probably know, we've had legalization of recreational cannabis use in Michigan over the last several years. We have had several different cannabis businesses in before our planning commission and our zoning board struggling with the same types of issues. There's limited zoning available for those types of businesses. If someone else gets there first, then that carves you out of a certain area of the neighborhood. These are real struggles. These are unfortunately generally not the struggles that we're able to address through a variance because of the requirements, specifically this requirement that you demonstrate that that property can't be used for any permitted purpose. That's a high bar.
But any property,
You have to
you
demonstrate
like that
that
though?
no other type of permitted business could actually operate there in order for us
It's
to.
an impossible question.
Well, for some parcels, it is possible, depending on the parcel. For this one, because of where it's located, and because of the fact that it is in a strip mall, and that there are clearly other uses that are operating within that same area, that fact alone, unfortunately, strikes against you when it comes to the variance request, because there's already substantial evidence there that that specific property can be used for a permitted use.
It can be used for a smoke and vape shop, which is, to me, an adult store. You have to be 18 to get in there.
And are those not adult stores?
I don't think that,
I don't think that's under
Cannabis
the,
stores are not adult?
They are not?
I know, I'm just asking, are those not adult stores?
I believe they
In
are.
our ordinance, I think they're novelty stores, they're separate.
Right.
There's specific use requirements for them. We had there was another one of those recently as well. And that ordinance was recently updated. So I guess what I'm saying is,
What about the vape stores? Are those adult stores?
that's what
It
Justin's
depends.
talking about.
yeah, it sort of depends on what they sell. There's very strict regulations with those as well, that some of those are considered retail depending on the products they sell. Some of them more like, Wild Bills or something like that is more of a novelty store based on the way our ordinance is written.
So, but they can't be a novelty store.
Correct. Their uses falls under the adult businesses definition.
Question through the chair. Sure. Let's just say they didn't want to have a storefront, they just wanted to be a fulfillment center. How would that change this application? Like what zones would that, like let's say they just wanted to have a warehouse and they could do a fulfillment center within the city. Where would that,
So I believe that would probably be under manufacturing, so probably more of the industrial, the M1, the M2 districts. I think that there is, someone who does that sort of business. But yeah, traditionally where the manufacturing warehouse type buildings are, so M1 and M2. I think all the production uses that are, in our commercial districts usually require some sort of retail element, like a minimum of 20% floor area in some districts where you have a storefront with, production in the back. So this, to answer your question, in the industrial districts.
so, and then the second part of the question was, is there like because I don't, for some reason my Article 20 cuts off before the definitions, so I don't quite have the definitions of what exactly makes it adult, but could they toned down the products, like they said they wanted to sell shirts. What if they just had a shirt shop with just kind of, you know, adult type things written on it, kind of like a Spencer's, right? Like I definitely remember Spencer as a kid having crazy shirts and stuff.
I mean, I can read the definitions and go through the use regulations.
They also want to sell dildos.
Right.
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying, like, let's say they nix that from the, they take it off the,
It's kind of a lengthy description, so I'm not going to go through all of it, but generally, adult
They're
book, novelty, retail, or video store.
Find it.
So it includes instruments or devices, novelties, or paraphernalia which are designed for use in connection with sexually explicit activities. There's a whole list of things here
Okay.
that, you know, at least from the
But
description,
theoretically-
it seemed like it fit, you know,
Yeah.
that category.
but if they were to cut all that and just like go to the bare bones of things they wanted to do, two options might be, one, they could have a fulfillment center within the city, but just not have a storefront. Or if they really want to have a storefront, they just have to cut the level of products they're selling in the storefront. Am I understanding that correctly?
I don't want to get, I mean, because that wasn't what was proposed to me, I don't want to answer
Okay,
or give
okay, sorry.
anything that I might misspeak about, but,
Okay, it didn't come up for me like that.
Yeah, it sounds like that would be a pretty significant change to the character of the business.
Yeah. I'm just trying to give them some alternatives because it doesn't sound like they're getting anywhere on this tonight, but.
Right,
Rated on 6.2.
I have a question.
certainly.
Chosen Books allowed there.
What's that?
Chosen Books. They were allowed kitty corner from, like, behind the 7-Eleven?
They were on Hilton?
Yes.
Yes. I'm not really sure about that
It's
one.
not
I mean, it
zoned
was
for-
there, it moved from Royal Oak to that location, and it closed not long after that.
I think
I don't know if it had to do with, you know, finances or what, but yeah, it wasn't open very long.
we read a little bit about that they were restricted to 20% adult products.
Oh,
Oh,
I don't know if that was the reason
okay,
that they closed down. It didn't really say. We did some reading on it, research.
gotcha.
I didn't really say why they closed, but that was the last, I guess, LGBTQ adult store in the state of Michigan.
Really? In the state of Michigan? Wow, okay.
So we want to bring that back.
Yeah, they would have been permitted, they had to have been a permitted use because Judy has been on the board for 20 years and would remember if they had come in for a variance. I've been on here for close to 10 at this point. Certainly, there hasn't been another variance request like this, although I guess I can't state that definitively because up until a couple of years ago, use variances were taken to City Council as opposed to the BZA. So it's possible that that was something that was taken to City Council and approved at the City Council level. City Council, of course, also has the ability to change the ordinance, which we at BZA don't have the authority to do. So it's a little easier for City Council to make decisions along those lines without overstepping the bounds of their authority.
So if you guys were to be for us and say yes, it would have to go to City Council for final approval for a special land use.
Well, in this board, the only thing that we're looking at this board is just a variance. A variance that says that can you take a parcel that is not zoned for a specific use and get approval to do that use in that parcel? That's the only thing we're determining. Like a special land use is a different animal. That's something that goes to the Planning Commission. That's generally something where you are asking for a more kind of long-term permanent change in the use of a parcel. A variance is usually more limited and more temporary.
That is what we're asking for. It's a change.
Okay, what you are, and Justin was touching on this earlier, something more in the lines of a rezoning is what you are looking to do here, because the requirements for a use variance, and it's not, and this really has nothing to do with your business. The example I brought up before could be a cannery. It could be someone who's making, manufacturing beaded slippers. If they want to do that use, and they want to do that use in a zoning area that is not zoned for that use, they would have to meet these same requirements that you guys are faced with for use variance. Anyone else would have to meet that same requirement of proving that that parcel could not be used for any permitted use. It's a high standard, and that's why we don't really see very many use variance requests in Ferndale. Since they've moved that back over to the BZA, you may be the first one that we've seen since then, and it's been years.
Long time.
People generally don't ask for use variances because use variances, not just in Ferndale, but in the state as a whole, are very difficult to come by because it's a high standard. Justin has spoken to you about some of the other options that you would have as far as asking for a rezoning. The issue of us updating our master plan right now is also something that was raised during the master plan update. Generally, the city is looking to take a lot of input from the community about whether and how the zoning ordinance as a whole maybe needs to be tweaked. Vice Chair Palmer had some comments too. I'm sorry I cut you off.
No, that's okay. I think it would be more difficult to get a variance on a storefront in a strip mall. It would have to be the whole strip mall. It would have to rezone the mall,
That's a good point.
because you have to take a section. I think the spot zoning is not gonna work, or changes, won't
It
work.
has been done before, though.
No, we've not.
There was one location on the zoning map that was changed.
Yeah.
Oh, the pawnbroker, but once again, it was
It
on
wasn't
8
by
Mile Road.
itself, but
I think that-
it was still
and I think
done.
that was the difference, right?
I don't recall that one specifically.
We didn't do that. We
Yeah,
didn't,
that's-
we didn't change that.
Right, but
Yeah.
that
Commissioner.
one was,
Okay.
that one spot, little location,
It's a building in itself,
right?
so it's not one spot. You're talking about a strip center with one retail section that you want to rezone. We can't do that,
Why can't it be done?
because it's the strip mall itself
Okay,
that would have to be rezoned. You can't do a storefront.
Right, I think what Vice Chair
And what
Palmer's,
I'm just trying to give you some options here, and I just have to ask Justin also, darn it, what's the name of that ridge place? Iron Ridge, thank you. Isn't Iron Ridge an area too that could possibly, I'm just saying, because there's more commercial in through there and stuff.
I mean, there's all of those, Iron Ridge districts they're all zoned industrial, so I don't,
Oh, it's industrial, okay, never mind, sorry, I was thinking, because the reason I said that is because I think of Urban Rust and
Oh,
that Boston Tea Room went in there, and you know what I'm saying? I just
Yeah,
thought
so-
maybe there could be that mixture going on there.
there's flexibility for like retail and tap rooms and stuff like that, but adult businesses wasn't added to that list.
Okay,
If I may, through the chair, I noticed here, there's a note here that this is actually, was denied by the CED department, and it was denied based on the zoning?
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes, yes. So any business that is interested in opening in the city, they fill out this zoning determination request form, and that usually gives people a heads up, like before they sign a lease or buy a building, hey, this is either permitted or not, or you may need to get a site plan approved, that sort of thing. And so when things are denied, we always tell people your options are use variances or rezonings or conditional rezonings. Ask for a zoning interpretation. There's a lot of different options, but so we talk about the criteria for use variances being very challenging. And as you said, the only other one that in my 6 years that I've seen was tabled by the applicant because they saw that it was not likely to be approved.
So are you saying that the applicants came here knowing that this, being it had to be a rezoning, being termed under use variance, was going to be very challenging?
Yes, I believe that I relayed that. Particularly just the unnecessary hardship section of the use variance is very challenging, but, it's still I'm not allowed as staff to tell people you can't apply for anything. So this was one of the options presented.
Justin, do you agree with me that it would have to be the whole strip center?
I think that, based on variance criteria, that would probably be more likely. I
Right.
still don't know
So
that
the
it would
owner
be.
of the strip center could go and have that, go before and ask for it to be rezoned C3.
That's certainly an option. I'd have to check and see like the existing uses, if they are all permitted in C3 and there's different,
Right.
challenges
I'm
with
just
that.
saying, because I guess visually, I mean, really, the many years that I've been on here, I can't even remember, you're telling me that there was one which was pawnbrokers, but that was different because it's a separate building.
And that, yeah, so that was a conditional rezoning through the planning commission. And then there was one here that was on Livernois that was applied for use variance, and the applicant tabled their
Okay.
request.
But the only thing I can remember after, I think, and you were supposed to check on this, I think 26 years on the Board of Zoning Appeals, I don't remember anything that was in a section of buildings that was being asked for a use variance. And a use variance is very difficult for the Board of Zoning Appeals to even, unless you can prove that no other business can be in that place, our hands are tied. There's just no way we can do anything about it.
So
But-
what other businesses are C3? Or is it just us?
No, there's a lot. Upper level residential, medical, dental, and physical therapy offices. Is that one, other one in this one?
Amusement arcades, banquet halls, health, fitness, and exercise clubs, participatory recreation and amusement services like bowling alleys, swim clubs, court sports, private clubs, public parks, playgrounds, theaters. There's a number of different uses.
I guess
In
that
the
takes me
C3.
back to a long, long time ago. There was an arcade on 9 Mile in the original F&M store, which is way before anybody around here, but anyway. But it was on the south side of 9 Mile, and then many years later, I mean, like a gazillion years later, Just for Us opened. Just for Us only closed because the owner died. However, Michael Leary took it over for a little while too, so I'm not, well anyways, the point is that it was just, it was an ongoing business that might have been zoned differently then. Our zoning has changed, and I'm not kidding you, since I've lived in the city almost 40 years, the zoning has changed probably no less than 5 times. And the reason is that we always have to go through that rezoning or remapping our zones. It's a requirement, but I don't know, and,
So was the massage parlor part of C3?
oh my God, that's been gone a long time.
What's that?
There was a massage parlor
There's
that's,
one in that strip mall.
oh, that's true. Yeah, and sometimes it's open.
Yeah, that's not characterized as an adult business.
It was, so a regular massage parlor is not characterized as an adult business, and that place was not meant to operate as other than a regular.
That's true.
I was just told that from the landlord,
No,
that
but,
there is a massage.
right, but it's not considered adult.
It's not supposed to be doing adult massages.
To your question about the other business, there is in our mixed-use district, you can have a business that is a video sale or rental as part of the business, as long as they restrict any adult video sale or rental to no more than 20% of what they are selling or renting. So that's probably where that 20% figure came from that you were talking about with that other business.
Yeah, so it would be chosen books is what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, there you go.
So through the,
And that's what
It'll be a
Kevin
mixed-use
had too,
We have a
district.
just
ton
for
of
us.
apparel already, and different things that are not adult. But adult is the major part of our business. That's why we started. We just keep adding more and more stuff. The leather was the latest thing that we've added.
Yeah, Kevin had a small video area at Just for Us.
We don't want a video area.
No, I'm just saying maybe that's why.
Yeah, no, I'm
It's
saying,
allowed.
yeah, I'm just saying we don't want to get.
through the chair, I have a question for Justin.
Mm-hmm.
Was the medical office rezoned? The gentleman we just,
The church?
Yes, that was rezoned, I think, from R3 to OS.
Okay.
Conditional rezoning, so the applicant presented specific conditions in a legal agreement that was considered by the planning commission,
Okay.
and then city council considered it after that.
I was just curious because I know C3 is those type of business as well, so I didn't know if that went to C3. But my overall comment to you, which you don't, I mean, I'm sure you have no shortage of things in the zoning code to work and tweak on, but I think there's some alignment that needs to happen between the types of businesses that are restricted to certain areas, because it's kind of shocking to me that vape stores are not considered adult businesses, and they don't face the same limitations. Do you think that's intentional or just an oversight, or what?
So I guess through the chair that,
Okay.
Vape shops are more recent, so I think that even like some of the state statutes have had to catch up with that. I would say that in our ordinance, vape shops and head shops are a little bit different. I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I would say that, or I don't necessarily agree with that, but I would say that, that is something that, I think if you'd like to bring up to the planning commission for future zoning ordinance updates, I think that would be fine. I mean, I think right now, if you look at the planning commission agenda, there's been, 5 rezoning requests, not all of them granted, but in the past 12 months. And so that is usually a signal like that a city should update their master plan and take a harder look at the zoning ordinance. And so I think it's well timed. And, this is really the first adult business that's at least came, through my office for a request. And so that's a relatively new thing, but, I think it's worthwhile to have that conversation here in the master plan. It was not something that I think the commission had on their radar, but.
Didn't come up the last time around.
Yeah.
It's, with this, the ordinance that governs adult businesses currently, section 24-141, was adopted March 8th of 2010. So it has been 11 years or so, a little more than that, since the city has last given any consideration to how to regulate adult businesses and how to define adult businesses at the city council level.
Our landlord is not opposed to being rezoned for the whole strip mall.
That's something that he'll have to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and that
I'm
was,
just saying he's not opposed
It's
to
just
it.
it's a good option. I mean.
Yeah, I think that's an option you should consider, especially because I think from your speech, I feel some of the arguments you're trying to make are political, and so you would have that opportunity to be in front of an elected political body making those arguments. Do you want to support this type of business in your town? Do you want vape shops and not this? Looking, you have to do a lot of work to take a real hard look at the zoning map and really piece out what we're allowing and what we're not allowing. 'Cause what I think I heard Justin say is that basically some of this newer stuff like vape is maybe being allowed almost by default because it's not been around long enough for us to be specifically calling it out and excluding it. But yet adult businesses such as a porn shop, let's say, or the type of business you're trying to do has been long enough for people to specifically call that out. So those are all arguments I would bring, but it's not this body that will be
The smoke and vape shop, their
Right.
products kill you.
right.
I don't think a dildo's ever killed anybody.
Well,
Knowledge, so.
well,
Yeah, unfortunately, I think you're
I don't know.
running into a societal issue, right? I mean, the most adult of all would be alcohol, and that's freely
Everywhere.
accepted almost everywhere, bars. I mean,
used to.
perfectly fine to go get wasted in half the establishments in the city, but yeah, you can't do certain things. Judy, do you know, is it, it's not uncommon for people who want to live in a certain neighborhood to send letters to every house in the neighborhood asking if they're willing to move? Have you heard of people doing that when there's limited zone C3 district, sending letters to every single business in that, hey, do you want to move? Would you be willing to, can we buy you out of your lease?
There's ambulance chasers out there, sure. Yeah.
I mean, I'm saying, there's certain, they
No,
said
I'm
there's
just saying,
nothing
if you
available
wanna,
right now,
if you want to
but
go to the businesses that are zoned properly and knock at their doors and say, hey, we'd like to take over your space, you never know.
Well, I mean,
But I would
C3 would
point
still
out-
include those businesses, correct?
Well, and I would point out that you will still be asking for a special land use permit, so you will still be talking to city council.
I'm
So,
prepared for that.
right, so I'm just saying, your rezoning, your special land use, well, the rezoning would be planning commission, or,
Right, the planning commission is the recommending body for special land uses and rezonings, and so, you know.
oh, so it would all be with them.
Yeah, so
then.
there'd be a public hearing at both.
It won't go to council at
It
all.
would go to council, so planning
after.
commission recommends,
There
and
you
the
go.
council is the
Yeah.
final
There you go.
decision.
So in both of those instances, you'll be going through the same process. For the rezoning and the special land use, it would be the same process with the same bodies. So, that won't be us, but, you know, when you're making a political argument, you gotta make that in front of the politicians, right?
Obviously, made you guys feel something towards the whole situation, so I think that I could do a pretty good job with speaking with anyone else to try to get this rezoned and get this accepted, because it should be.
Well, it's not something that we can say yay or
Oh,
nay to.
I know.
And it's interesting because you might want something really bad, but if it doesn't fall into place, it's like, why would you buy a size 10 shoe when you only wear an 8? And
I've
you,
been
and you
going-
can't find an 8 shoe? Yes, you can. So there are other
We can't
places.
find
He said they
anything.
can't, he said this is their fifth.
We have been looking for 5 months.
That's a
We've been
short
told
amount of
no.
time in this market.
We have been told no at every single location that we've gone to.
Okay, but it's a short amount of time when trying to establish a new business. It's not out of the ordinary for anyone. I had a client that looked since January to find a house. So we just closed on it last week. So it's 8
We
months.
both don't have jobs, so we're trying to find a business right now.
Well, but that's your urgency. and-
Right, it's
and
an
ideally-
urgency and it's also a passion.
Right, but I think that if you want a specific location, and if it is that strip mall, it would have to be the owner of the strip mall that would have to possibly get the variance, or the change of zoning, excuse me.
So how do we go about that?
That's not our job.
That's an issue that goes to, asking for a rezoning is a request that goes to the planning commission. It's,
But I'm asking how I get a hold of, how do I go about
Dustin.
doing any of
Justin
that?
will help you.
So I can follow
Justin will help you.
Yeah.
about that process.
Okay.
And present the options again, and then decide if you want to go down.
Because we were told this was our option, right, was to do this variance.
I mean, I'm not going to go back and forth, but I gave multiple options, and.
I don't remember a rezoning option.
It's okay.
I'm just saying I don't remember a rezoning option.
I do want to make it clear as well that a rezoning is also not something that is lightly granted in a city. One of the reasons being that you have a zoning map that's decided upon typically during the master land use process. The presumption is that there's a reason for that zoning, for that district to have been zoned a specific way. So there are showings that need to be made to get a conditional rezoning considered at the planning commission as well. It's nothing that's being offered is close to a rubber stamp. If you are looking to put a square peg essentially into a round hole, it doesn't matter what the nature of your business is. It's always going to be difficult to do that if you're looking to do something that is not consistent with the existing zoning.
Well, we found a place in the zoning, and we were told no by the landlord.
And that's unfortunately not something that the city has any
Why is it
control
zoned that
over.
if he's gonna say no? Like,
Because anything else can go in there besides that.
That's a private property right, unfortunately. The state and the city, we have no way of regulating that.
it's
not
That's
saying-
like zoning a graveyard.
That's like us telling you that you can't
Just
sell your
C3.
house to someone who's a certain religion. We can't make that decision for you. It's, as you see, we sense that you're frustrated with the process, and we have sympathy for your plight. Your plight is not unusual when it comes to a business owner that is looking to open a business enterprise in a municipality where the availability for those enterprises are limited. You know, and with us being a quasi-judicial body, it is, we're more limited even than other commissions and then council, because we're not allowed to change the law. Council is allowed to change the law, we're not.
I need to go to who needs to change the law.
One thing that, you know, and that is something that you could, you know, this is something that you could propose to council. You could take this up, ask for a text amendment, you know, ask for consideration of a text amendment. One thing that you could point out would be that there's a broad blanket definition of adult businesses here that doesn't necessarily differentiate as much as I think you guys would like, because the business that you're looking to open isn't like it's not a strip club. It's not a theater. You got a lot of things that are collected right now under that umbrella of adult businesses. That's if you were interested in taking something like this up with council, whether here in Ferndale or anywhere else, that would be the type of thing that I would advise you to look at, asking for some differentiation in a definition of adult businesses and potentially addressing the zoning differently for what type of adult business you might be looking at. Again, unfortunately, these are all things that are outside of the powers of the board.
I feel, I've never done anything like this before, so I don't even know where to go from here to even start that process. That's what my issue is.
Okay.
It's like
I believe that if you were to talk to Justin, he would direct you.
okay,
I also believe that Chairperson Williamson also suggested that if you wanted to be, you know, present something to the city council, you can, but I would do that with at least a lot more knowledge of what you can and should do. And if you also, the landlord would have to go through the process of rezoning the strip mall. There's a lot of options, but it's not going to happen tomorrow. That's the
Right.
problem.
the problem is he wants to get his space filled. We have a deposit with him down for 2 months now, and he's been not collecting on because he believes in us also.
That's good, but unfortunately, until it's zoned properly, it's not for your business. It's hard, you know, that's something that most people,
He shouldn't be a C3, for sure.
Right, so I think through the chair, that's kind of exactly what Chair Williamson said. If you don't feel that you fit neatly into the C3 category that you're being placed in by our possibly outdated zoning law, and to make that argument for a text amendment to the C2 or the C3 that would put you in that C2 category, because I'm just looking at the zoning map and I'm seeing a lot of C2 in places where there's a lot of empty businesses, right? And you already talked about going through the city and counting up the empty storefronts. Well, that's kind of important information. How many of them in C2? Is the C2 definition working for the city and the property owners? It's a bigger issue than just your particular issue, but it's not that anybody doesn't want that business in this city, but that we can't just say it's okay for it to go into this particular C2 without sort of a harder look at the whole C2, C3 thing.
That just needs someone with a big mouth like me to bring it to light.
Yeah, I mean, you could put a bug in people's ear if you want to.
you may be that change, which is great.
That's what I want to happen.
Right.
What I'd recommend, gentlemen, is that you think about consulting with some attorney who specializes in land use or real property issues, even just for an hour or two to have someone help run down specifically what you can do. Our city staff can tell you a range of options.
Right.
But the city staff can't make the determination. City staff can't really tell you which one is more or less likely to succeed. All they can do is tell you these are different paths that you could take. But those paths existing is no guarantee that those paths are going to be successful. Getting someone who can sit down, look at the ordinance with you, help answer your questions about it, and help you develop a strategy for what your actual path is that they think will be more likely to succeed might be some time well spent for you.
I think that's a good idea.
I'm ready for it. Oh, the landlord wants to speak.
Okay,
Certainly.
please do.
How you doing?
Good.
My name is Nabil Abu. I've been in the city 41 years. I built the east side north corner of the 9 Mile and Hilton Market in 1980, and I built the Ferndale Plaza in 1987. 1986, I have to fight the city for almost 2 years because they tried to move the theater from Woodward, the 9 Mile to Hilton and 9 Mile by the gas station. They tried to rezone the whole thing an adult strip. And I have to fight it for 2 years, and I was at Kelly and Company on TV and the Daily Tribune every day. So what happened now, the city tried to put an adult strip over there, all adult magazine, bars, theaters, and suddenly things change. Why?
The zoning changed?
No, because I fought it, I did not allow it at that time. But now things change. And the adult things is all over. It's all over. As a matter of fact, the Chosen Book, that was my building. 1956, Hilton was mine, Hilton Liquor was mine, 9 Hilton was mine, Ferndale was mine. I was the very first builder who came to Ferndale in 1980 and built the whole thing. And then the gas station came after me, Gage Oil came after me, Subway came after me. All this new building, that was because of me. Even the Gap. The Gap was if you remember, that was. So what happened now, suddenly, Michigan Work, they moved, and I have it for 4 years, 3 years and a half vacancy. Because the zoning, nobody can open certain things. And I only allow one, I give an exclusive for every single business, lease from me. One restaurant, one pizza, one medical clinic. So what happens, suddenly things change.
Well, I understand that it probably feels that way, but over the 40 or 50 years that you've been developing property here in Ferndale, the zoning ordinances, it's not a static thing. It's almost like a tree that's constantly growing and changing. Every time you have a new government in place, when you have new council members come in, different priorities come to the forefront at city council's level, and the city council is constantly adjusting or adding to or subtracting from or changing the zoning ordinances over time. Every 5 years, every municipality in the state of Michigan has to do a master plan update where the city looks at the current zoning ordinance, looks at the current zoning map, looks at the planning goals for the city, and has to update these. So this is not only a thing that's happening constantly, it's a thing that's actually required under Michigan law. Municipalities must do this.
You're making it harder for me to lease my building while I'm paying $65,000 a year in taxes.
We're not doing that.
I understand the
And I
perspective,
spend
sir.
every year at least $100,000 on keeping it clean, parking, roofing, heating, cooling, the facial. I mean, why? How do you expect me to make money and stay in business?
Well, these are good questions for city council, sir, because city council is the body that actually passes and adopts the zoning ordinance. At the Board of Zoning Appeals, as I said at the beginning of this meeting, we do not have the power to amend or change the zoning ordinance. We are restricted by that zoning ordinance, and what our job is, as the Board of Zoning Appeals, is to try to ensure that things don't stray too far outside of the lines of that zoning ordinance.
He's opening a business that is strictly protected from any underage. And he said he's going to have partitions. So it's really like more or less like warehouse.
It's still not compliant with the ordinance, sir.
Chair, may I ask a question? Why did you fight the ordinance changes 40 years ago when they wanted to rezone the whole strip?
I never fought it.
I thought you just said you fought it and you were on TV.
Oh, no, 1986. You know the gas station? That was across the street from my store. They tried to move the movie theater, all the bars, all adult peep shows, whatever. And at that time, I was not interested in these things. Because Ferndale was really an old community, an old family community. Everybody owned his house. There was no leasing. Today, things changed. So we have to go with the changes. And we update ourselves like everybody else. So it's not something bad what they're going to be selling that you think it is bad. There's a lot of worse.
I didn't say it was bad. I actually was just curious why you thought the previous instance was bad. That was my only question.
Previously, I was a different person. The whole world changed, not just me. So I got to go with the changes.
Yeah, I would agree.
If I may-
Nowadays, there was nobody can sell marijuana. Now it's behind my shopping center. There's 4 of them, 5 of them. There's 3 more to go. I got to go with the change. I was against marijuana. Now I go for it. So, I mean, things change. I got to go for it.
Huh.
So these people, they are looking for something to do, make a living like anybody else. Last 4 years, I lost more than 400,000 by moving Michigan workout. They've been here, they were my tent for 21 years. They were paying 120,000 a year. Now I lost the last 3.5 years. So it got to be some kind of compromising. If there's any rules restriction, you can tell them. I mean, we will follow it. What's the difference if I change my building from C2 to C3? And is that anything to do with taxes?
I'm just a citizen who helps out on the board. I don't know a lot of the laws, so I'm unsure.
So if we change it to C3, is that a guarantee that you're going to get the license?
It sounds like it's still a special use permit anyway. Even if it is C3, you still have to go through the process to get a special use permit.
And if I may, through the chair, I think it was mentioned earlier that the city is in the process of updating its master land use plan. I think with you being a vested business owner in the city, that these public meetings and things that are coming up, I would recommend that you be involved in that. Regarding, there's going to be public meetings for this coming up. We're in the process of going through this right now. So I would recommend that you stay abreast and be involved in these conversations.
Okay, I will. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and through the chair, I just want to point out, I appreciate everything you're saying about back then versus now and how many things have changed. None of us are the same people we were back then. And I just want to encourage you that just like you said back then, you fought against, certain things coming to your area, and it sounds like you were successful because I know that the theater didn't move. And so just like then, you can fight now for, saying that the city needs an expanded definition for C2, or they need, whatever the best route that makes the most sense ends up being. And I don't think anybody up here has stated an opinion against what these gentlemen intend to do in the city. It's just that we don't feel that this variance is something we can grant and that it's the proper applicable route to such a larger sort of issue of change in the city.
Thank you very much.
Unless there's further questions or discussions, I entertain a motion on the variance request.
I've got papers everywhere.
Just read it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, sir.
Okay, here it is. Okay. So therefore, okay. I mean, it's my first time reading a motion at this. Okay. So I am moving that the Board of Zoning and Appeals deny the use variance application to allow an adult business at 717 East 9 Mile Sidwell number 24-25-27-492-008, after a public hearing was held as set and published for this date and place.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. We want to table the decision.
You'd like to table it?
Yes.
Certainly, that's your right. If you'd like to withdraw it at this time, we'll take no action on the request at this time. Do we need a motion to table this, Justin? Or is this something that we can just take no action?
I don't think we've
We
ever
can do
taken a
either.
motion.
Yeah, I think I'd recommend just take no action. The applicant went through their application, and staff will work with them on the other options that they
I
can
don't think we've had
consider
to have that.
going forward that were presented by the board, so I appreciate the extra explanation.
Certainly. All right, gentlemen,
Thank you for being here.
I'm sorry we weren't able to help you
I
more
appreciate
tonight.
all of you guys. I mean, you guys want it, you just can't do it. So I felt that from all of you, so,
We're not denying you
right.
at all. That's all
Heard
there's
about
to
the
it.
restrictions that we're up against as a quasi-judicial
The
body.
impossible question.
Exactly. We wish you the best of luck, and it's a difficult road. Anytime, whether it's your business or one of the cannabis businesses or any business that is coming in a little bit ahead of where the ordinances have caught up, it puts you in a difficult spot.
It
But good
does.
luck to you.
Yeah.
Thank you. You guys haven't seen the last of me.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, and with that, we will table any further action on agenda item number 2 here with the variance requests having been withdrawn. And that takes us to agenda item number 6, which is administrative items. City staff, do you have any administrative items for us?
None this evening.
All right.
I have one. I've been meaning to bring this up and I keep forgetting, but these books are like way out of date that we got a long time ago. By any chance, do you still print these out, or since it's all online now, we don't do it anymore?
We'd recommend online. It's just
Okay.
much more dynamic.
Okay.
They change it every
Changes
time.
all
they
of the time.
update
Yeah, I
it.
mean,
This is what you want.
I tried pulling that up, that's beautiful how you have it, I can't get
I
it to
like the
open up
book
that
too,
way.
it's just
Well, it's-
impossible to keep.
You're gonna have to show me how to,
That would
It's
be
just
starting
nice to
line.
quickly reference stuff, but like,
it came up as line items.
It's a different browser, that's why.
No, I didn't use, sorry, I used Chrome,
Oh, weird, because I'm using Chrome.
yeah. I actually looked to see what you typed in there, because I'm like, okay, let me try that. And I wasn't getting that.
All right, moving on from administrative items, having nothing further, takes us to board items, number 7. As chair, I can say I have no specific items for the board tonight, but do any other members of the board have something to raise for board items?
I do not.
Nothing from me?
But, okay, yes, I do, excuse me.
huh.
Since you have that, and it's really cool, and I like it, can you get links sent to us so that we can pull up, like Michael asked, instead, can you send us a
Sure, I'd be happy to send the
Just
Municode
send-
link. It has all the chapters. You can click on it. I mean, are you just looking at normal
Just
Municode,
normal
Chair Williams?
Municode.
I
Actually,
mean, that,
maybe if
that's the
you,
easiest thing to read, I couldn't believe it. when I
I'll
saw it.
I'll send it to you. It's recently been updated, but it's all the same.
I think
Yeah.
it's, Judy,
Information.
I think it's just different,
might want to include it on the, in the agenda,
like, cause it's never been.
or in the
listed
agenda
as
packet every
before.
time, actually, because then that way, Justin, not only can other board members
Well, I'm
get
using
it,
an iPad.
but also any residents that might want to follow along and actually see the ordinances
But it
would
is
be able to do
different
the same.
than what it
Sure.
is. It's
There's,
not on the side.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's,
Easier.
Yeah.
I had assumed you all had it bookmarked, so I will be happy to send that link out.
How do you
Just-
bookmark
stick
It's
it
been
on-
the same link for like
an iPad?
No,
10
but
years, but
just stick it on the
Yeah.
agenda.
I'm bringing my
So that
computer next
anytime,
time.
you know, if someone's watching
See,
from
I'll
home or
interpret
listening from home, they can just
I need
see
to
the
listen to
agenda,
the
click on the link like they do on other agenda items, and pull
Sure.
that up in their own browser. I think
Yeah.
that the ease of use would probably be appreciated by residents and board members, and
yeah, it's very searchable.
we want to make things as simple as possible. for
I
people.
just, when I saw him doing that, I was like, whoa. And it doesn't work on the iPad the same way.
Just forward you the link.
There's not much I can do about that, but
I'll bring my laptop next time.
Justin, we'd also like you to make some tweaks to iOS and make it work the same way. on
you
the-
know, let me get back to you on that.
And even though I was on Chrome, just like he is, it just didn't come up the same.
Hmm.
It was really weird.
I was gonna say, yeah, sure. I'll send you the link. Absolutely.
Thank you. That's better for me. And save it that way.
All right, with no other board items on the agenda, we will adjourn this meeting of the BZA at 9:16 PM.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Give it another 3 or 4 years, Jordan. Give it another 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, he definitely thought his first job.
That I watched, though. You know that Star
I
Trek.
do know that, Star Trek.
My mother was such a Star Trek freak, 'cause we had to like literally eat dinner at a certain time so that she could watch her show.
Oh my.
Yeah. Yeah, she was,
Well, Star Trek was the show.
I'm pretty sure that after, 40 years of Star Trek, sci-fi, we are so much closer into
actually, I grew up on the Jetsons, so that takes you to.
Good night, everyone.
I still want to, I want to drive in space, right here. That'd be fun.
Oh, my goodness. That was an interesting one. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I think you'll see